Welcome to this, our meeting of Michael J. Fox movie, Still. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. This movie was just released a week ago, and we have the opportunity now, I think some of us to have seen it at least once, to really say, the reviews are excellent. He's getting all sorts of fabulous publicity. For all of us in the Parkinson's community, that's extremely exciting whenever there's this type of publicity, because it's like, okay, now what can we do with this? And as I mentioned to many of you before we started, I think this is a call to action. It's an opportunity for us to grab onto some of this lightning and strike along with it, okay? So I'm going to open with the broad-based questions, and then we'll start getting into specificity. Feel free to raise your hand if you have something based on this. And this is the big opening. Why does the movie matter to you? Why does the movie matter to you? I see Kevin. Yes, Kevin.
When I was diagnosed back in 2009, his activities and his actions previous to that made it easier for me to call my friends and relatives, family, and close friends and say, here's what's going on with me. We always knew there was something up with Kevin, but that's another story. But nevertheless, it certainly paved the way to make that conversation dramatically easier. Having a lot of big health issues in my family, unfortunately, people get scared when you call them about your health. And this wasn't as serious of a concern. It wasn't a serious matter. And people didn't understand that. They didn't understand what the disease is and what it isn't. So I applaud him. I think he's a hero 10 times over. And when he did this stuff with Muhammad Ali in Congress, that was also essentially helpful to all of us.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kevin. I love that idea of laying the groundwork and the foundation to have a family relationship, a personal relationship with Parkinson's, because that's what we all end up having, and to try to, give some groundwork to it so that no one, the goal is to be stuck in isolation. No one is left out in fear and going through the worst parts of this, which we're all going to go through whether we want to, alone. Let's make sure that's not happening. So good. Who else? What does this movie mean to you? Yes, Susan.
Well, I actually want to just say thank you to Kevin for what he just said. That was just beautiful. That Michael, having done what he did prior to Kevin's diagnosis, made it possible, easier. That's just an amazing thing to say. I would say I felt the same way about the books when I was diagnosed in 2015. That the first book was called Lucky Man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not over that. And all the other books had equally happy titles, but wow, what a paradox and juxtaposition. And then you find out it's true.
Yeah.
And this movie goes the same way.
Once again,
and also, well, in the movie, he said it was one of the few times he got really emotional. He said, people tell him he makes a difference, and he felt a responsibility toward that, and he didn't feel up to it, and it was really tearing him up. And yeah, he's one person, and he's done a lot.
I want to jump on that last part in particular, and we'll start to transition here, which is he's one person, because this is why I think this is a call to action, and that vulnerability that he showed there in saying that he's not always up to us. If we always in the Parkinson's community go, boy, I hope Michael's doing something, I hope Michael J. Fox Foundation is doing something, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure. We're underestimating our individual power in this group to do what he's doing in our own way. No, we can't tell the story that Michael told, because none of us have the cachet in terms of, one of the brilliant things they did in the film, use all of his incredible clips of movies and TVs throughout the years. That doesn't mean, however, that we don't have stories to tell. And that's what I think he is asking for. They certainly, as an agency, they are, as Dave Spinney, as with Parkinson's Foundation, they want your story. He's lighting a path for a way to tell a story. And as Susan just highlighted, that vulnerability that makes him so human, that he risked that, that's what we need to do with our stories. we need to be that vulnerable. I see Russ. Yes, Russ.
Yeah, and as he was saying that, I was thinking of a friend, he was one of those people who even people in his own family turned against him. He's faking it to get disability, or on the other end, he's he's making it worse than it seems or whatever. But yeah, I had a friend like that, and this Michael adds with this movie adds so much legitimacy to that issue. Which he explains how how he was hiding it. That's the other end of it. You could be hiding it, or or the aspect that all these things, all these different symptoms are real. People with Parkinson's suffer in so many ways, and seeing it really happen with him adds so much legitimacy to it.
I love that you said that. I love that you talked about there's, what is Parkinson's, and then what's underneath that. That's where I want to get all of the emotional, distress, the mental health issues that come along with the various fears, anxiety, and everything that comes along. Michael knows from the beginning of the movie, right? He's never been still, right?
Yeah.
He's running all the time. That's who he is. And he gets to it, as we see brilliantly at the end. He gets to a Zen-like still in that gentle walk with his family on the beach, right? Now he's reached that, sitting there looking out at the ocean with his son. Okay, I'm not done. I'm not dying today. And yet I've reached some level of still, right? All of the things that Russ mentioned about the underneath. And again, how many of us have ways of trying to self-medicate or hide from the emotional stuff? Has anyone ever done that? Everyone, in any way? Michael brings us out brilliantly in terms of the alcoholism, for one.
Right.
What did that part make you feel when you see him self-medicate and Sabotage, which is played brilliantly, the Beastie Boys song, comes forward? You see all the downward spiral, and it's so obvious. Did anybody latch onto that in their own lives of a spiral? You don't have to tell the story, but did you get that feeling of, I've beaten myself up too, because it was too painful to face the reality of what it means to have Parkinson's?
Yes, I have.
Go ahead, Nina.
I don't drink or do those things, so but I can understand that part, because if you're drinking, and if that gives you some kind of comfort or escape from reality, that's where you'll go. So for me, it was just like denying, completely denying, and taking the pills like he did. It's like in my head, I would count, okay, so it's 2 hours, I have to take it now. So I don't have to show anybody that I have anything, that I can walk normally. So it's just like managing that time and saying, okay, and for me, I have a problem when I eat, so I have to wait it out. So in my head, I would keep this mental math going, okay, I can't eat for 20 minutes, so I better not go out with anybody to eat. I better stay out of that, or I'll just tell them I'm not hungry.
A denial, a refusal, a story.
Right. So it was like, well, what's wrong with you? You always loved eating. Well, today I'm not hungry. I'll just wait. I'll just eat a salad. I'll just nibble on chips because I could take that. And then it's like everybody else is done eating, so it's like, okay, now I'm hungry. I can actually, but it's too late now. Let's get to go home. So it's
Everybody out of the kitchen. I'm going to eat.
Right. But I couldn't do that because I knew the pill wouldn't work.
That's a good jumping off point, Nina. Talking about the pills, I think he brought that forward brilliantly, the filmmakers and Michael, to show how they're used, because medication means a lot of different things to a lot of different people and for various diseases. Now, with Parkinson's, the timing thing that Nina just brought up is extraordinarily important, right? How many have missed a medication before or mistimed a medication before? Yeah, there are dramatic effects when that happens. And when it comes to the unspoken part that I'm so glad Nina brought forward, the social effect, I guess I won't go out to eat because my thing hasn't kicked in. I see a lot of nods go along with that, right? That it's a tricky thing because it's not like, even if you have a regular schedule, does your body respond exactly to the schedule the same way, even if you have that?
I wish.
Oh, it's a little tricky, isn't it?
That'd be nice.
It
Yeah.
would be nice. Yeah, I see
Yeah.
Russ. Go ahead, Russ.
For me, I think the drug was, by the time I was diagnosed, I wasn't much of a drinker or anything like that, and wasn't susceptible to that. But I think the drug for me was ego. Even now, I could over medicate enough so I look like I don't have Parkinson's. I'm still even though at this stage I can still do that, but I do that less. The thing you just talk about, I won't go to a meal because I'm off, or you miss. When I'm around people, I don't pay as much attention to that. So sometimes they see me when I'm going off now, whatever. But it used to be almost like a drug. Whether I go out dancing, whatever, I over medicate, and I'd be like a crazy man and Superman, and feed my ego that way. Oh, look. And it wasn't like Michael, he over medicated to hide it. I wasn't hiding it. It was the fact that I had it. And then I showed that I could overcome it, albeit temporarily, with by almost overdosing on L-Dopa, but nevertheless, I guess that was a drug, the ego stroke.
I think that's beautiful vulnerability, Russ, for you to bring that forward to say, I'm not going to be anything less than, and I'm going to show you how, and again, to have that lever to pull, that pill to pop to make that happen. Michael said, I popped him like candy, right? And yes, you mentioned it was hiding. I would say ego was definitely involved with Michael though, too, right? Because where he gets to at the end, he's holding a different level of Michael J. Fox. He's holding a celebrity that holds his financial future, that holds his, again, remember who he was before, and we can go back in the movie now, before he got Family Ties, right? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that the Hollywood of the shitty apartment and the jelly packs from IHOP. Who is that Michael J. Fox in the world? Who is he?
He's driven man.
Well, he's a driven man, but to the world, who is he?
He's an everyman, he's just a normal guy.
He's a Canuck.
Yeah, a nobody, basically, right? I mean, it's less, Barry, as a Hollywood guy, knows it's less than a dime a dozen, those people trying, right? So, and again, you see, it's not that he's not working, but if the work is, as remember the check he got and his character, it's not fair. I'm doing this. Now it's a Hollywood story, but is that a relatable life story where you're working really hard and you feel like a nobody and you're not getting what you feel are your just desserts? Is anyone, can you relate to that moment, the humanistic? Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone's story in Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And this is where we try to draw it to say it's not just Hollywood, right? To say if you've struggled to do or be anything in your life, and that could be a family role, that could be a job role, that could be, this is where we talk about the hero's journey a little bit, right? It is the struggle as you're looking at that part of things. You've accepted that you're on a journey, but the journey ain't what you thought it was going to be. And now that's where that mentioned, like Russ did, the ego there. Oh, okay, who am I? And once he became that, what did we see happen when Family Ties happened? And not only did Family Ties happen, but back all of a sudden, Teen Wolf happened, and it was almost crapping on that opportunity because down the street there was Back to the Future, and then Back to the Future happened, and it's this whirlwind. What happened in regard to his ego at that moment? Right?
Yeah,
It's
blew up.
And here's the interesting thing, the dichotomy, right? He's blowing up, he's huge. Remember when he goes in front of the magazine stand?
Yeah.
He doesn't recognize any of those faces. Now, isn't that interesting? To walk in a world where you're, according to everyone else, this, that, and the other. And he had a line in there. He said, I don't know what anybody sees in me. So the ego is very thin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, everything on the outside looks great, but on the inside, he's terrified. This could all go away. Yeah, Kevin.
One of the things that I recognize is, and I was perfect age when he came about and into the public eye. He came from literally nowhere, didn't have a lot of training. He was in the theater club at school, and he usually played the 12-year-old little kid, right? You need a 12-year-old little kid for this part. I'm perfect for that. But the thing that I noticed though is he gained notoriety immediately. I mean, he's a very talented individual, is what I'm trying to say. And I think he brought that talent, and he was able to bring it along with him into his new world right now, which is PD. So, you know, and he also participated in a few television shows and a couple of movies while he was acting as a person who had Parkinson's disease.
Right.
And I think that he brought that forward very bravely, but he also has talent.
We saw that in the movie toward the end when he was putting on I forgot it was the
Something Curb Your Enthusiasm.
well, we saw Curb for sure. What was the Margiela's her TV show, the court
Oh,
drama,
the good
The Good Wife.
Good
Wife.
wife.
right?
Yeah.
And he goes up and he literally says, "Yep, this is what's going on with me." I mean, how validating that was. And he just says, "And by the way, if you get past that, you can hear me." You know, he didn't do it. It was the opposite of what he was doing fascinatingly earlier. Now that you look at it in context of him holding his left hand onto anything to show if it's jittering, and no, it's just a character prop. That's a move, right?
Yep.
In real time, did anybody recognize he had Parkinson's?
Yes. We
I
did.
sure didn't.
No, I didn't.
Not back then, no.
No, you look back at now and you go, of course.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And again, editorially, how beautifully the film lays that out, right? To tell the story.
So it was almost like a game. You found yourself looking for every time a clip come up. Oh, I saw a little twitch there, you know.
yeah, you're like, oh, there it is. And again, beautifully editorial. I want to go to something that Michael said rather early on, and this is about storytelling. And I think this is important about the Parkinson's narrative. David Guggenheim asks him about the sad sack narrative, you know, poor Michael J. Fox.
Right.
And you remember what he says in reply to that?
That'd be boring.
It's
That'd
boring.
be boring. So again, anything that starts there, that's such a good place to go. It talks about the nature of pity. How do you all feel about pity and being pitied yourselves? Yeah, Kev.
That's one of my biggest issues when people say they're sorry for me.
Mm.
And I say, don't be sorry for me. I didn't bring this on. You didn't cause it. And I just have to live my life with it. And it's fine.
So what do you want, Kevin? What do you want them to say?
I want them to say, keep up the good fight.
Yeah.
Keep exercising, keep working out. Keep helping other people out when you can. And I don't want to hear this. I'm so sorry to hear that. My grandpa had that. He was really old. I hate to say this to you guys. You guys are all my friends, so I feel like I can say this. I'm not old.
Yeah.
I'm only 57. So, and Russ, you break all the rules as far as age goes. So.
Russ, you had something you want to add?
One day I'll spontaneously combust stuff. So.
That's the way to go out, man.
No, you were talking about age and everything, and so Michael J was like the perfect person to dispel
Right.
a lot of things about, you know, the way a Parkinson, what is a person with Parkinson's, what do they look like, and how do they act, and you know, and we were talking about, you know, whether somebody would pick up on, you know, a symptom or whatever. And I just had a plane trip last weekend, and sometimes I tell them if it looks like it's crowded flight or it's navigating that I have Parkinson's, I tell them it's because, you know, maybe in somebody's way, so maybe they can clear a path for me or whatever it might be. But I got my luggage, my carry-on luggage off the top, and I kind of like saw, you know, a path to like get through, and I wanted to get out of everybody's way, but nobody knew I had Parkinson's or anything, and it came across like I was rude. And I felt so bad, but, you know, because I think somebody said something under breath, like, you know, everybody else wants to get out too, or something like that. I don't know.
You know, that sounds a little like what Nina was talking about in reference
bad,
to.
but same.
Oh, sorry. You're there. You're being still. Russ, if you could
Movie,
hear me,
you just
hold
don't
on.
want to,
for-
you know, you get ahead of steam going, you're just gonna go.
Yeah.
Very good. We missed part of what you said, Russ, but definitely got the point. And what I want to do is yes, and part of what you're saying about the timing and the perception of what people think. Nina talked about a story, right, of avoiding lunch because of that. You talked about trying to get out of people's way. There's this undercurrent of constant negotiation and management for the world, as if I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to be a pain, or I don't want that attention on me. And we see that brilliantly throughout the film too, right? It's the same way Michael's in avoidance. He knows he's in the public eye. He knows that this attention's there, but he wants to manage the attention. He wants it focused in the right area. Ultimately, where he gets, and I think this is one of the gifts and perhaps calls to action, is where he goes kind of in that courtroom scene. It's Parkinson's, okay? Just right? I think that's the freedom. We talk about the Parkinson's prison in our day one program right now. And I think that negotiation and that dance we do, which no judgment, we all do it, not just for Parkinson's, but a lot of things, whenever we just don't feel like dealing with it. I think that's a prison that we can relieve ourselves from when it's fair and appropriate to say, you know, like my dad would say, it's just effing Parkinson's, right? We could put that forward and have that not as a screw you, get out of my way, but as a this is what's going on, I'm going about my life, right? How does
I
that
find I use it to my
Yeah.
advantage. And I
Yeah.
used to, it's funny, Ross said about flying. When I fly, I'll call the airlines up, or I'll at the gate, and I'll say, I have Parkinson's, and I'm in the middle seat, and I might have tremors, which I'm okay with, but it might disturb some people around me. Can you help me out? And I do a little twitching, and
a little bit of a taste?
That's my way to get in first class.
I've gone in first class. They go or extra room. I can tell you what airlines you can do it with on the phone. Some are great. Delta and JetBlue, God bless them. It works all the time.
No, that's good, Penny. If you can leverage it to get good stuff.
I leverage it all the time. I might as well I have the bad things that come with it, but I use it all the time to my advantage when I can.
Now, how do you feel about that? Because I like that personally. And if you have a contrary point of view, this is a discussion we can open that. That to me is an example of being truthful, number one, and where accommodations can be met, they damn well should be. Because, you know, again, what happens too often is the other side, you know, oh, what is this one? You look fine. Well, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't deal with what's going on inside, or what may happen in 20 minutes if I'm in a different part of my cycle.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Yeah.
So the warning, the ahead of time, and the unpredictability of that is, I think, quite bold, Barry, and I like that. Yes, Susan.
It's a denial in reverse.
Nice, nice. Good. So the denial of the call, the refusal of the call, is the third stage of the traditional hero's journey in the realm of Chris Vogler and in Joseph Campbell's work. We have the ordinary world where we start, and for our purposes in this film, the ordinary world is him as a little boy. The first 5 minutes is kind of a prologue. It gives you an overview. When he hits the ground running, that's his ordinary world. Michael is a kid and the expectations of what's going on. You know, the call to adventure, the idea of, hey, they need 16-year-olds who look like 12-year-olds in Hollywood, right? There's a slight refusal from dad for a minute, and then an acceptance, and they move forward into that. There's more of this which comes forward later when he starts looking at his world in the light that other people see him as. And this is something interesting. The cop that pulls him over, when he's clearly guilty of speeding and reckless driving on Ventura Boulevard, and says, oh, hey, Mike, cool. And he recognizes, oh, crap, there's no consequences for this. Think of that humanistically. That's probably the worst thing that could have happened to him, yeah?
From my perspective, no, but I'm selfish that way.
Well, I know you're a fan of driving fast. I know that's
I
important.
am. I are.
From a standpoint of remember he said early on that he just didn't acknowledge boundaries at all.
Yeah.
Parkinson's is going to become a boundary, but it's not just Parkinson's. It's treating other people, right? It's how he treated Tracy when he
Yeah.
made the offhanded joke about her breath. And what did she do back to him?
She gave it to him in spades.
She pierced him, right?
Yeah. She
So yeah,
knocked him off of his pedestal.
there it is. There's this outside thing that keeps the ego thing, as Russ brought up, keeps going, right? And the world's going to bow back to that as long as he's successful. And he's coming off of Back to the Future and Teen Wolf, and he's the star of Family Ties. And, he admitted, yeah, I'm pushing back. And you see him in these meetings pushing back, and everyone in the director being like, okay, all right, if you say so. But Tracy just says, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
And nobody talked to him like that. And what that did in terms of, he got still early.
Well, he was in love with her too. That helps, but
Well,
I think he had a lot of respect.
Why
for
was
her.
he in love with her, Kevin?
Yeah.
It's not
She
just that
was-
she was beautiful. He saw lots of beautiful ladies.
She gave him a chance, is what she did.
That's
Yeah.
not just gave him a chance, she gave him the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wouldn't put up with it.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go,
Exactly,
John.
John.
This is the, and this comes up in Hero's Journey. This is the value of boundaries. Okay. We think in life, wouldn't it be great if I could do anything, anywhere, anytime? I argue that's anarchy, and it's not really what you want, because it's not how the world works. You're going to pay a price for living an anarchistic life, thinking it's all about you, right? Someone who gives you appropriate boundaries in a social setting says, wait a minute, not only does he learn how to treat Tracy, but who else does he learn how to treat better?
Himself.
Himself.
Yep.
Because what did he say? He said, she scared the shit out of me. She showed me things about myself that I was afraid to acknowledge were even there. Yeah, Susan.
Mentor.
Mentor. So that's the stage 4 of the hero's journey. Beautiful. She is the true mentor, because as much as there were acting mentors and whatever, that didn't get him what this movie was about, right? The movie's about becoming still, figuring out who the F Michael J. Foxon is, right? And she was absolutely the mentor. Very well called. Great. She's clarity. She's honesty. And, she's going to let him know. Now, there's success and the kids are being born, but how does Michael handle it?
He regresses back into his workplace.
He does. He's running faster, isn't he, Kev?
Yeah.
And
But he hadn't told anybody yet. In
well,
his
I don't think
professional
this is, in terms of the movie, he wasn't diagnosed yet.
world.
I think. I'm not sure.
You mean
exactly.
after he was diagnosed when his first kid was born?
When
Right.
her first
He
son,
hadn't told
when
he hadn't
first son was
told his
born.
colleagues, his
Okay.
professional
Yeah,
colleagues.
yeah.
Right. So great. Okay, so let's go there. So there's a diagnosis that only he and Tracy know about.
Right.
He's going to keep that inside. And there was a very interesting. How many of you know the writer researcher John Palfreman? Wrote Brainstorms. Also did the case of the frozen addicts, which was the people who did the bad heroin that gave them Parkinson's. Incredible storyteller. And it turns out then John Palfreman himself gets Parkinson's. Just crazy. He was the guy who gave the line piercingly to Michael at one point. It's a clip in the show that says, someone asked him, what do you do with this early in his diagnosis? Because he's struggling with everything we talked about, right? This is an old person's disease. It's not me, right? And John Palfreman says, the main thing is to be truthful first with yourself.
Uh-huh.
And how hard is that? How difficult is being truthful in the face of an unknown thing out there? I open that up to you guys. How hard is it to be truthful? Yes, I've got this.
Well, I think we can fool ourselves. We can tell ourselves we're being truthful because there are certain things that we're uncomfortable with, but we can acknowledge and admit to ourselves.
Then beyond that, there's a closet back there that's got, several shelves that have things that are remain in the dark until they force their way out upon us.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. A stepladder of truth telling, right? We can take some things, but not that. Some things, and
Yeah.
and I guess that goes to my point, John. Because you're working with me in the day one program. How deep are we willing to look, right? Because these things may not be surface level, and how brave are we to go into our own caves? Perry, did you have something there?
Yeah, it's sometimes so hard. You don't have any choice but to tell the truth. Your self-esteem is shot to hell. You can't communicate with anyone. No one can understand what you're trying to do. Pretty soon you got to say, this is who I am. I need some help, and acknowledge exactly what's going on.
So what I love what you just said there, Perry, is I need some help, right? I think that's the fight that Michael is putting forward. And I hear so many times, this is the repetitious story. The one I think we're trying to get to make this not just Michael's story, but the Parkinson's story. So more people who are going through this can come out of the shadows and feel and get the help they need, is to recognize the shame, the guilt, the whatever the correct emotions are, the terror of what it means to have this thing, and that you feel, what were the words you used, Perry? How did you feel? Overwhelmed?
And overwhelmed, scared, and trapped.
Trapped. Good.
What am I going to say?
Yeah.
There's really, you're beyond anything of self-defense anymore.
Okay, lovely, perfectly said. Beyond self-defense, I've tapped my resources. I need other people, right? Other people who are going to allow me to be seen the way I want to be seen, and also to be my Tracy's, to hold me accountable, to be no BS for the stuff that I may be trying to hide. Look, do all of us hide stuff from time to time? Yeah. I mean, there's things in life that are no fun, and that's why we need truth tellers, loving truth tellers in our life, to help us know when we actually should be asking for help, or that we can go to say, hey, look, I need the truth on this. Can you tell me what you see? This is part of the value, the dynamic value of our relationships with each other. And also, the better storytellers we are to ourselves, the more we understand these stages of the journey, the more we'll recognize them and have language to effectively help others in their own stages. Understanding the hero's journey really is the key, I think, to understanding human condition in a way that people can digest. And now there's a movie, again, I'll publish this later, but here's the hero's journey in still. Here are the steps in still, so that you can say, oh, okay. And then again, take those and go into your own life so that you can offer them to yourself and to others. Does that make sense? Barry, you have a background as a screenwriter. How do you see the hero's journey playing out in Parkinson's?
I'm not as familiar with the hero's journey. I
okay.
teach screenwriting, and I always hear about the hero's journey, and I'm too lazy to read it. So I'm not the best person to answer that question.
No worries. You understand story structure. I mean, a lot of the things I'm throwing out here, you get all these beats, these moments. That's what it is. That's the application to it. So yeah, we'll talk offline. I'll get you up to speed. So let's keep applying here what's being, when we talked about Michael running away, right? About he's got the kids, he's got, he's got the wife who's the truth teller, and yet he's still got a diagnosis that he can't let the world know. Maybe that's been exacerbated too by the fact of the fear, like Perry talks about, because now he's got responsibility beyond, right? Not just the wife, but the kids. If he doesn't provide at this point, I mean, who knew financially? I don't know financially where he was then, but maybe it's the idea of, I don't know how long I get to do this based on this unknown disease. And so I've got to milk this as long as I can to provide some long-term security. Because by the way, I'm 31 years old, very early here.
Right.
Yeah.
Ostensibly, I may live a long time with this. And, what does disability look like?
And that might be the worst part of it. That he's
Talk to
gonna,
me about that, Barry.
that he's gonna, that he's not in his 50s, he's not in his 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
And, I question how long do I want to live now?
And that's a reasonable question, right? Now, and you've lived a life that you're happy with and long, happy, saying that's good. And I think my dad questioned that in Boys of Summer, same thing. How long is this quality of life going to be worth it? Susan wrote a beautiful piece on it in our day one program. And, it doesn't come up here. And yet I think it's a valid question within the Parkinson's community to talk about that too at some point. What is too much? I mean, Michael jokes at one point, they say, in 20 years, and he laughs and says, if I'm still around in 20 years, there's either going to be a cure or I'm going to be a pickle, right? He knows he's
I
got
think
this one.
I read all three of his books.
Mhm.
When I read the first one, it was helpful, but I'm going, because the message of the first one was how Parkinson saved his life.
Right.
How he was living a terrible, he was drinking too much, he was unhappy and all that stuff. And I go, well, that's great for you, but I was leading a happy life. I was having no problems with my life.
Great.
And I think in the third book, which is my favorite book of his, where he talks about what happens when you're no longer going to be optimistic, when you lose your sense of optimism. And I don't know if this was in the movie or an interview I saw with him on CBS Sunday Morning, where he talked about how he survives is if he could just find one thing that to be grateful for.
That's
Right.
huge.
It keeps you going.
That is, and I love the fluidity of that, Barry. And I so appreciate you saying too, because this is where I want to be back to the call to action of this, that if Michael's story is the only story that's out there about Parkinson's, the problematic thing I think that comes back is people go, well, it's not really that bad, right? If they only take a piece of it, or, you look good, that they don't understand the pain, the struggle, the fear, the fluidity of this thing. And by the way, who has the resources that Michael has in this room, right? Let's be real about that too. That is, it's the blessing that he's out there because of his resources, but sometimes I think it's the burden of the every person trying to get by and, financially struggling and fearful of the future and everything else, perhaps that goes along with it too. And that's why these stories in totality, for those who don't have the resources, every single one of us, and by the way, live this disease individually, both as people with and care partners of, to tell these stories so we flesh it out and again get the attention and the money that this disease needs from a research standpoint. So it's a balance to walk. And Barry, I appreciate you doing it. Nina, did you have your hand up there? Sorry,
Well, I didn't, but I do have a comment.
Yeah.
Because you said the research to cure the disease, right? And I'm all for it, but also I want the fact that how can we live a good life with the disease and
Correct.
not have to think every morning, is this worth it? Because I'm going to feel tired. I'm going to have to take my pills. That's the first thing I do in the morning, then that's the last thing I have to think about when going to bed. So it's like, it's constant. It's a never ending thing. And so I try to find, like stuff that gives me immediate gratification, and improv has helped me with that because it makes me feel like, yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm in the present. I'm alive.
we get
you
we
know,
get that hour of being whatever we want to be when we improvise, right? And I mean, again, Nina, what I want to point out is the humanistic value of that, because as not a person without Parkinson's, I've told Susan, I think I've told many of you, sometimes that's the best hour of my week too, or the 2 hours, as it were, that I get to be that with you, that too, and experience all of you going through that I know we facilitate a room where we support each other at that level, to where we just get to be free. And Michael in the movie, he recognized that in a different way, right? Early on when he said, I don't have to be just the short, nobody getting his butt kicked hockey player. I wish, I could be a bigger guy. I can be anything and anybody I want. And again, just to point to improv in that sense, that's the freedom. And thank you for bringing that up, Nina. Susan, you had something to add?
When you use the word free, it's what you described to me. You feel most yourself here, and and Michael described that too. He used the word free. I mean, being in the present, as Nina just said, and being free in that moment is such a blessing.
I find, oops, I'm sorry.
Go, Barry.
Andrew. I find that since I've had the Parkinson's, which is, I was diagnosed 7 years ago, I find myself being a kinder person. That I'm not as angry anymore. I teach now, and I treat my students, I'm much kinder with them. And I'm very honest with them. I tell them I have, first day, I tell them I have Parkinson's. And I make a joke about it and puts them at ease. And so that's the good thing about having this disease. People can tolerate me more.
Barry, I'm guessing the response you get, that number one, being out in front of people and in these students, and so you're offering value. And I know that feeling of standing in front of the group, how that nice. You know, you've done something that can generatively help others live better if they, want to take something from it. You're giving a great gift by teaching, and you're receiving something too, because you are putting your full self out there vulnerably. This is me with Parkinson's. That's the deal. The joke to set them at ease, and then it's the reality. So I'm guessing that that's part of the validation for keeping going, as it were, because both you and Nina brought this up, and Nina, I appreciate you saying it too. You said, is this worth it? That same thing. I love that. That's the value of being out there and present, right in front of other people, and again that way. Yeah, that's good. Russ, you had something?
I think a lot of us see, I've seen examples like Barry just said of how telling our story helps people, and not just people with Parkinson's or people who even know anybody with Parkinson's. I went to pick up my bib for a race once, and the woman looked at my name. Your name's Russ Parker. I spoke to you 5 years ago, and I was scared about running, and I told her my story with Parkinson's. And she goes, I never forgot that.
That's got to be satisfying.
That made me, that made me,
Ran a good race that
maybe
day.
shed a little bit of a tear, because I had impact on her.
So here's the thing, John, I'll get you just a second. When I talk about the value of storytelling and why I teach a day one class and why I hope more of you will get involved in that, and please spread the word about that. The storytelling has the power to do exactly what Russ just said. And sometimes we worry about telling our story in totality. Well, there is no totality. It's telling the moment, the piece by piece, the day by day, the line by line, and again, sharing that as frequently and as broadly as we can, so that those people who we don't even know we're touching can live better. That's beautiful, Russ. John, you had something.
Yeah, just a little story on my side. Several years ago, I was on my way. I was going through Las Vegas airport and had a layover there. And I stopped to get a cup of coffee at Starbucks. And as I walked away, this fellow walks up next to me. He's quite a bit younger than I am. He says, excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but do you have Parkinson's disease? Which took me off guard, because I don't think anybody's ever stopped me in the street like that. And I said yes. And we actually sat down, and drank a cup of coffee together. And I told him very honestly my story up to that point in my life. And I think he had said that someone was close to him. I can't remember whether it was his father or mother at this point with Parkinson's. Then he opens up and is able to tell me that he's been diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Oh boy.
And he's telling me his story. And, I know it meant a lot to him to have somebody there who was willing to listen and could empathize with him with this, what he was going through. And I just felt like, I was there for a reason, there was some divine reason that I was placed in that place with that shaking Starbucks in my hand as I walked away from the counter.
That's
So
beautiful.
John, thank you. That's so beautiful. And it reaches us at an interesting point that Susan's aware of. Maybe many of you in the community are not. Susan's obviously on the board. We talk all the time offline, but with the SN exercise, we are at this interesting transition point because we get approached by other groups with disease states about couldn't this work for? And John, you just shed the light on something absolutely beautiful that says this really isn't about Parkinson's. This is about the human condition. Because, I mean, the hard thing with Parkinson's is everybody's manifestation is different anyway. It is about living bravely, about being available to listen, like John said, empathize, compassion, and share stories in a way that helps people live better, right? So that people with Parkinson's, especially who take this on, we have this group that we're growing, we could become ambassadors, not just for Parkinson's, but for everybody, because, here's the deal, nobody gets out clean. Everybody in life's going to get their stuff. And we can all do better helping each other if we are brave enough and vulnerable enough to share our stories in ways that help other people say, instead of "that's not me," and Michael, how long was Michael fighting "that's not me," using those exact words and recognizing that is me, and thank God I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Right? That's the fearful thing about admitting it's you, is that you'll have to be alone. Perry?
Yeah, when I was a shell of a person, and I had to step out and do something. And testing limits, not looking at tomorrow, but looking at maybe 30 days from now. It's not going to change overnight. But then, and I think little things add up, and you can look back and say, "Wow, this is doable." And by living that, and other people seeing you living that, you are providing some sort of a mechanism that shows that, yeah, you can do this. You can do this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
possible.
We can answer those bells that Barry and Nina so bravely brought forward of the waking up and going, is it worth it? And you can, as Perry said, yes, it can be. You can do this. And again, these are daily checks. This isn't like I get it and I'm done. It's the same way we show up at the gym and do another exercise, same way we show up to improvise, to face and play with the unknown in that moment. It's a daily process. And the more we can accept that, we can live mindfully and well every day. Yeah, Susan.
Playing off of what Perry just said, the way that the improv games are taught in the Yaks method is building little steps. The first step, as Perry said, and then that takes you to the next one. And when we're learning a new game, it seems so small, the first step, and almost like, oh, this is too easy. And then it's only when you add another complication, and then you add a third one, which is paralleling what Perry was saying, that you realize this training that you get in the improv helps out there in the real world, giving yourself permission to take each one of those steps.
Yeah, I think it helps us all become John in the coffee shop and say yes, because John could have refused that very easily. What are you talking about? No, back off. How rude of you. John didn't say no. John said yes and sat down and gave a tremendous gift to that young man who, again, not about Parkinson's, about his thing. So life,
Right.
And again, like you said, you had no idea that was happening or coming. You didn't, get up that day and say, oh, someone's, but 10:10, better get ready for my coffee appointment from a stranger who wants to talk about a brain tumor. Got it.
Didn't have an appointment for that one.
Yeah.
Does anyone
On
here
the other
find?
hand, I wouldn't have, just let me finish up. I wouldn't have walked up to that counter and said, oh, I guess I got a brain tumor. Maybe I'll sit down.
You wouldn't have chosen that. Can I have that off the menu? And a latte, please. Barry, yes, and then Barry.
I was wondering, does anyone here look at people in the news and go, oh, they have Parkinson's? They have Parkinson's. I was watching the Denver Nuggets basketball game last night, and they cut to a shot of an older man watching the game. And I'm going, who is that? Who is that? And then go, oh, that's George Karl, who was a longtime coach of Denver and a lot of other teams. And I could tell from the look and the shaking of his head that he has Parkinson's.
Yeah. And we do become aware, don't we?
Yeah, we really become aware of it.
Harry, you had something to add?
You know, and people see that it's normal for you. And it's how I live now. And I'll trip or I'll drop something. And I just look around and say, gee, you think I had Parkinson's or something? And I just, you know, that's kind of the way it is. But that's me. So
Yeah, there it is. There's the acceptance once again. So where all of this points back to, and I think the film points back to, is acceptance. That A, we need help. That B, this is all those emotions we want to put on it: scary, terrifying, you know, anything that those, all of the acceptance of those emotions, and you know that others out there are going to be able to be guides, mentors, allies along the way, if we are so bold as to be the young man in the coffee shop, right? To allow ourselves to say, this is going to come out sideways, but I need help, right? I'm going to say it however I need to say it, you know? And what did he do? He connected first. That's the whole point of improvisation. And I'm going to say, really, it's the point of storytelling too. We tell stories to connect to our best selves. We have high stakes, because otherwise, why does it matter? And is Parkinson's a high stakes disease? You know, this is where I think there's a story problem in the community. I think there's a lot of people who, because of denial, sell it as not that bad. And I'm not telling you to try to hyperbolize it and make it, you know, because that's how people, they'll rationalize, say, well, it could have been something acute. You know, and again, Susan, our friend in here, can point to having breast cancer twice. She gets both of those. Yay, breast cancer and Parkinson's. So it's not about better or worse. It's about the human condition, right? Parkinson's is that bad in the sense of the emotional unknown. And this, how do we connect and share, you know, those things? Through storytelling. That's the key to storytelling, right? That the emotions come through. It's not just the statement of facts. It's how we feel for the people that go through it, right? It just scribbles on the page. But if we connect to that person, because they're emotionally available on the page, they're going through it, they're active, not passive. I know Barry knows this one. Passive protagonists suck, right? We want people.
I learned that with the first script I wrote.
There you go. We like people who do stuff. They can do dumb stuff. They can do bad stuff, but have them do stuff, right, Barry?
Right.
That's the same with us, I think, in the Parkinson's community. Let's do stuff. Let's not be isolated. Let's not be quiet. Let's let people know we're active, not just for ourselves, for each other.
I think one of the things I appreciated in the film was the shot, and there was a long shot of him walking and then falling.
Walking and falling,
yeah.
Early on, yeah.
And the way it was shot and the way it happened, the camera was far away. And you want it, when you fall, you want people to be far away and nobody see it. And you want to, part of you wants to rush towards that person to help them, and part of you wants to run away from that person. And with Parkinson's, you're dealing with that all the time. As a person, you're dealing, I want to run away from the disease, or I want to run, or I got to confront it. And I'm glad I showed that he still struggles with it.
There it is,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And interestingly to me, my mom just pointed out this morning talking to her that he's not using a walker. And that's a specific something that I had with my dad. Those of you who've seen Shortstop know it's kind of a through line, because there's a whole ego-based thing about that, about not wanting to be seen, not wanting to be bothered, and the cumbersome nature of it, this, that, and the other, versus the acceptance. And Michael, at least as far as this film goes, says, falling's part of the deal, and really to broken bones, to a broken face, to the concerns from the family. That's an unresolved thing we hear at the end, where he's sitting with the son. His son's basically saying, we prefer you didn't fall. You can see the son struggling to basically say, Dad, kind of the conversation I had with my dad, to make some call with him and say, I need you to use a walker or something. That for now, Michael, for whatever reason, they don't get into it, is refusing. I'm not saying a walker is the answer, but it would help, I would think. Susan had something, and then Nina.
Just in that scene, Barry, do you remember what Michael said to the young woman? He said, "Oh, you knocked me off my feet." I mean, he still found that humor and that charm from the ground.
And Barry talked about the value of humor when he addresses a student. Barry writes a lot of comedy. I think, in this room in improv, we play with comedy, not in a jokey sense, but in the humanistic sense. Just like that was a great human line, right? It was a juxtaposition. Yeah. You knocked me off my feet is this metaphorical idea, and it literally happened. And, it allowed an awkward moment to become okay.
I know in his book, the third book, he talks about he has an office which looks out on the street, and he talks about he sees this 85-year-old man walking slowly down the street, and he would moving very slowly but progressing, and he talks about being envious of that guy, going, I wish I could walk like that, and I'm 30 years younger than that man.
Yeah, that's a great point. Nina, you had something, and then Kevin.
Yeah, you were talking about why he doesn't use a walker or a cane or something, and why your dad refuses. Well, I can tell you why. Because I have those devices, and honest to God, I'm always scared if I'm not medicated well enough, I'm going to slip with that thing. Because it's like, I can't balance. How am I going to balance a thing? I'm going to be walking all over the place. That's going to fall. I'm going to be more hurt. I use that cane in case when I'm fully medicated, if I'm going out, and if I need something to hold on where I feel the need. But when I walk with that, I'm not hitting the ground with that. I'm just holding on to it. So it's kind of a weird thing, because people watching me, and I'm sure they're thinking, why is that woman even got a cane?
Yeah.
She's not walking like a person should with a cane. And it's hard
I
to
do the same thing.
Yeah, Russ mentioned the same thing, and there's shots in Shortstop, the third of Boys of Summer, where my dad is dragging the cane behind him similarly. Where we got to, and this is neither right nor wrong, there is no perfect solution. You're absolutely right. For my dad, in his case, the walker has allowed better mobility for him. And agree, even with all of the difficulties, it has allowed better mobility, and not just for him personally, but also kind of a social mobility. Using it signals, kind of like Barry talked about earlier, to other people, hey, something's going on here and I'm handling it. If you're stumbling without something like that, the social signal is, I better go help. And my dad's big cue is, leave me alone. And yet the humanistic reply is, and he's dealing with this with a home helper aide, by the way. He just was complaining about this today, saying, she keeps grabbing my arm, and I'm telling her it's making me hard. And I'm like, Dad, are you using your walker? Are you just trying to get by? Because, it's a back and forth. So it's just hard. And that maybe that's part of Michael's summary. It's just Parkinson's.
I also understand that part of your dad, because do not grab me. That sets me off balance.
Yeah.
Do not touch me, just ask me what I need and I'll tell you what I need.
Yeah. Kevin, and then Perry.
Nina, I absolutely agree with you. Robert, I don't want to change the subject too much, but I saw some of the things that the trainer was doing with Michael, and it just didn't sit right with me.
Yep.
And by the way, Darby Shaw, and I know a couple of you guys know Darby very well. She was in Chicago last weekend. We got to have dinner after we had watched the movie on Saturday night. And we were talking amongst ourselves at dinner, and she said, I wanted to dive into that scene right now and get that trainer, kick his butt out of there and help Michael with his challenges, because he's teaching them all wrong.
Yeah. I was yelling at my wife. I was like, give Michael J my number. He's doing crunches. That's to
Oh, did you see that with his neck?
to further, make his forward lean go further, I guess.
Yeah.
So this is so interesting you bring that up, because here is a guy, as we've mentioned, with the best resources, to get whomever he wants. And ostensibly, he believes, and we've all got our individual, and a lot of this comes down to confidence and relationship, that he believes this trainer, because I don't want to trash that trainer. At the same time, I want to allow you guys your opinions of the trainer, to say this person works for him. Now, could someone else do it differently, better? It's hard to say, right? Because it's such a fluid thing. We don't know from watching Michael exactly what all his challenges are. We don't know. He has, for whatever reason, put his faith in this person for better or worse, and it's his journey. All of us can't. What can we do? We can live our best and present our story without having to take on anyone else's thing and say they're wrong or bad, right? And now the marketplace of ideas gets to decide, say, oh, that's a different way of handling it, right? Because with Parkinson's, if there was ever a big tent disease, this is it, right? There's as many modalities and ways of feeling as there are people going through it. And by the way, how many of you have like 12 different ways of feeling about the same damn thing on the same day? So I appreciate the discussion, and let it go on. Just my only caveat would be is respect to everyone's choice for their choice, I guess. Susan, and then Russ.
I am interested to know if any of you had the opportunity to watch this with loved ones and how they reacted to it. I could feel my husband's anguish and fear and sadness, even though he's, a remarkable strength for me. There
And
were
a
certain
doctor.
scenes of and he's a physician. And there were just moments when Michael just had something, and he didn't say any words, but I could feel it. And that leads me to this beautiful, beautiful comment that Michael made near the end he was with his family. And he said, how did he say that? That's love that can't help itself. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he pierced a reality with that, didn't he? Once again, it was
Yeah.
one of those poke a hole through the truth
Yeah.
moments. I saw some hands go up. Who else watched with a loved one? John, and then Russ, and then Nina. John?
Yeah, I watched it with my wife last Monday night, and we didn't communicate during the show itself, except to take a little break to go to the bathroom. But afterwards, after it went off, I asked her. I said, "Well, how did you feel during the movie, and what did it bring up for you?" And she said, she first said something very complimentary. She says, "I can really appreciate the challenges that you have to face." I mean, you're not like Michael J. Fox, but there are things going on in your life all the time, every day. And then she asked me how I felt. And I said, yeah, and it's scary because, he's had it for 30 some years and I'm only halfway there. Not even that. I mean, what's the next 15 years going to be look like? And then there's some transition for her to say, and this is what really went into me, says, yeah, and I miss the John that you used to be.
What a line, John. That line reflects. I asked my dad at one point in our conversations. I asked him about, does he miss going into work as he used to, take the Barton to go to work, and that's what he did out here in the Bay Area. He said, no, but I miss the man who used to do it. And that's exactly, I know that feeling. Yeah. Russ, and then Nina.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this movie was so hard to make. I mean, there's so many situations, all he could do was tell his story, and whatever whatever bases he covered, he did. He tried, I think he did a great job though. But the thing that resonated with me with the family and everything was just, Tracy and the choices you make in life sometimes. And he has a rock.
That's thankfully he put that forward, and Tracy's unbelievable. She's and he knows it. She is that. I saw Nina. Yes, Nina.
I just saw the movie, so I saw it with my daughters, and they have never watched anything like this with me because they've actually denied because I think they know I have Parkinson's, they know I have difficulties, they've accepted that. But I think today it hit them because when Michael J. Fox was walking, it hit them like, okay, I can see that. And they were very quiet. So I know it was like, I can't talk.
This points back to, once again, the power of storytelling is that one layer removed. There's safety in watching someone else go through what we feel. Because
Yeah.
at that moment, they pierced us by telling the truth up there. And by the way, I didn't have to tell anybody. I might be holding it all inside, but at least I know I'm not alone with that thing that burden I was carrying. This is what we lift off of people when we tell our stories truthfully, vulnerably. Again, that feeling of being alone is lifted. Barry, did I see your hand as well? Did you watch this with a loved one?
I did. She was very moved by it. I mean, I was going out with my wife. I've been married to just for 2 years. I was going out with my wife for about 2.5 years before when I was diagnosed. And I gave her the speech, you didn't sign on for this. If you want to leave me, I understand. And she said, I'm with you all the way through this. And I went, thank God, because I was going to fall apart if you said the other. And then we subsequently got married during COVID. But she was very moved by it.
Barry, I'm guessing that line when he said, what did she said, and she said, in sickness and in health, that
Right.
probably really hit hard with you.
She said, my wife says that to me all the time when I question why she wouldn't. I only hope if the shoe was on the other foot, I would do the same. I don't know if I would.
Isn't it great to know you have a mentor in your life, though, that's teaching you to be a better man?
Yeah.
That's I think what we all want, is people in our life who teach us how to be better people. Every single one of us, and every single one of you in this room helps me be a better person. You help establish my purpose. And I so thank you for allowing me to continue to drive this forward, this thing in my heart that I know that both improvisation and storytelling are human builders. They're humanity builders and the best us we can be to face the unknown challenges. And they are tools. They are not silver bullets. They are tools that we get to pick up and play with together. And so thank you, all of you, for being bold enough to play with them together and share them with each other in your communities and continue to explore, because there's so much more for all of us, and it answers that question. I see Perry, yes?
I want to know the answer to Russ's statement there.
So Russ goes ahead and he puts forward, I have prepared what I will say when I fall in front of others. Live from New York, it's Saturday night.
That's great, Russ.
It's a good line, Russ. It's a really good line. We're over an hour, and I want to honor time and say thank you to everybody. Is anybody have any kind of closing thoughts, anything we didn't cover before we go about this beautiful movie? And again, thank you for your time.
I may be the only one that hasn't seen the movie yet.
Oh, you're here the whole time and you didn't see the movie?
I feel like we gave it away.
I'm just soaking it up from what you all are saying.
Gee.
Apple Plus is going to charge you $7.99 for being here. Oh, I highly recommend it. No, there's no,
Yeah.
This is the old story of the Titanic or whatever else. It doesn't matter, the ship went down. It's how it is. Yeah, no, well worth your time. And Perry, thank you. That's awesome that you came, regardless of.
Yeah, thank you.
because
And to think I paid for it just now to watch the movie. I could have done what you did, Perry.
well, we're here for each other.
To bring this to the close, Robert,
Yes.
how does the narrative from the still work with your storytelling in the sense, I'm speaking for myself. I'm a very ordinary person, okay? People here might be stars. But for me, I always thought, how will my story end? But now I think every day I live is going to be a story.
I love that. And what I said earlier is what I mean with that when we talk about our stories. A lot of people, just like you said, think about, well, what about the totality? How do I tell the whole thing? It's not about telling the whole thing. It's about telling the snapshot that is now. And it's not about trying to fit everything into one space. As my class that's currently going on is going to start experiencing, we're into week 4, which will be our first reflection week next week. They're going to look back at their first 3 weeks, and we're going to start talking about picking out pieces that it's not about, okay, I'm going to tell a 12-step story and it's going to add up to 148 pages, which is a nice little novel to put out there. That's not what we're doing. We're exploring, right? And in that, we might find a single line that turns into a haiku or a painting or a poem or a song or an essay. That might be the totality of the moment, because like you said, each day is a hero's journey unto itself. It's about, understanding and then, mastering these steps so that we can apply them on a daily basis. Go, oh, this is the ordeal. Oh, this is the refusal of the call. Oh, this is my reward. Oh, this is where that I need to have sacrifice. All of those moments give us day-to-day ability to manage and see them in others so we can help them manage. So that's really the benefit of this, rather than seeing it as a singular narrative, is to see it as a toolbox, right? And then to break it apart and use it as we need it. Perry?
Yeah, just real quickly, I see a lot now that I didn't see so many years ago, that I can look for an opportunity now to make it or to tell a little bit of part of my story. I don't make assumptions with anyone. I always ask, would you like some help? Not everyone wants the help. Sometimes they're working on, they're testing limits and doing this or that.
Yeah.
Hey, I went through this too, and it gives the opportunity.
That's so respectful, Perry. It's beautiful. Exactly. It's whatever it's supposed to be when it's supposed to be. I will say this, and this is somewhere I know Barry can join me in this regard, that one thing we learn by learning to tell our stories is what makes a good story, right? And that just because it is quote unquote our every average day life, that doesn't make it either a great story or a terrible story. There are elements that we can do that have worked since the beginning of time that we can go, yeah, this is either why it's a good story in terms of what other people will get from it, or why it is either boring or confusing, are two, things. So we want to be good storytellers. That's how we engage. That's how people go, oh, you touched me with that. Now I get to tell mine too. So keep that in mind. It's our stories are more than a recitation of facts. It's more than orange juice and a bagel for breakfast. Okay, you guys are awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for
Robert.
doing this.
I'll post this, and for those of you who want to share it, you're like, we had this great discussion, I'll put it up so you can point to it, say, check this out, and you can share it with people. So, because we want to keep sharing the storytelling. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys have a
Thank you,
great day.
Brian.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye all.